Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we're lucky enough to have Austin Black with us, host of The Heart of Money, and he really takes us deep into how a relationship can be affected by money.
They have a hard time communicating about money with each other. That is like the core issue and problem that I see. You're going to struggle to manage money with your spouse. You're going to struggle to live life with your spouse.
He gives us some practical tools to helping you and your partner create a healthy relationship and a healthy financial life.
I always encourage couples to view money as theirs.
Hello all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin. And today we are going to support all you couples out there, all of you people who are in relationship in one of the toughest issues that couples deal with. You know, one of the toughest issues I think we as just human beings in the modern world deal with, and that is finances. Money. And we're very excited, lucky to have Austin Black on. Austin is a financial coach. He's been doing it for a good bit of time now. He's also the host of the Heart of Money podcast. Welcome, Austin. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to be on other shows talking about money and marriage. And I'm really excited to have our conversation today. It's going to be fun.
Great.
So our first question is, what made you even get into this business?
That's a really good question. I think back to the financial journey that my wife and I experienced whenever we first got married. We both came into our marriage debt-free, and within a year of being married, we had bought our first house on a 15-year mortgage, and we planned to pay it off in 7 years. We had to pay it off in less than 5 years. Wow. And about 3/4 of the way through that process, I looked up and I was like, you know what? We have had so much success based upon our financial journey. I love talking about money. I love talking with people and with couples especially, and I love helping them with their money. And so, you know what? I can take the same experiences that I've learned and I have encountered and help other couples achieve the same level of financial success. And that's what really got me started into it. I've been following Dave Ramsey's program for a long time and decided to take his training along with what I had experienced myself and kind of put those two together to create my own financial curriculum. And that's really got me on the path to being a coach, was just wanting to help people experience the same level of financial success that we had.
I love that, just because it mirrors what happened with us, right? Like we were both therapists, but we were breaking down after the birth of our twins. And I was like, EJ, we figured out how to navigate it through in a healthy way, but I was like, we have to help other couples. So we created our own model too. And so just like, I love that you're taking the success of what you have achieved in your life and helping probably millions of others do the same. So that is awesome.
So tell us, like, why couples? You know, I mean, that's the main reason people tune into our show. And you've decided to help a lot of couples in their financial life. You know, why couples?
So whenever you look at a vast majority of Americans that are struggling financially, you know, it's a husband and wife couple. And there's a reason that financial fights and money problems are one of the leading causes of divorce in America, because it is extremely hard to be intimate with each other about the thing that is most intimate in your life, which is money. So, and seeing the success that I have with my wife and how both of us have grown and continue to grow in our marriage and in our money management, it just really resonated with me that I can help individuals, and I have helped individuals in the past, but to really have the greatest impact upon a couple's marriage and their family legacy in their life, I want to work with them as a couple, because that just magnifies the success that they get to have. So that's really why I draw to couples, is I see the power that working together on your money can have on your marriage, and on your family, and on your legacy. And I want to empower couples to have that same type of success in their own lives.
So when this might be like a bigger question, but when you start working with a couple, like what are some common themes that you notice when a couple presents themselves for financial coaching?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the biggest reasons that couples have a hard time managing their money or just making momentum, making traction with their money. Maybe they're good at managing individually, but they have a hard time doing it as a couple. And a lot of times it comes down to the fact that they have a hard time communicating about money with each other. That is like the core fundamental issue and problem that I see so many couples face is they both have great aspirations, fantastic goals, a strong desire and motivation to succeed and to have a better life for themselves, but they just have a hard time communicating that in a financial manner and talking about money with each other in a way they both understand and support each other. And wherever they come to me, we work through those problems and we get on the same page with each other. We learn how to communicate, how to talk about money, how to understand money individually. And that allows them to have that long-term success. But that's really that's the common theme that they experience is they just don't know how to have that conversation without arguing.
Well, that's so interesting because when couples present themselves for counseling and we're talking about like intimacy, communication, we get a full assessment, like how are your finances? And really the biggest thing you get is like either one person is in charge of all of it, but that they actually they might fight about money, but they don't have sit down talks about their finances. And so that's one of the goals we usually have in therapy is like helping them have communication around all of the big things that couples struggle with. Yeah.
So when you say that they don't know how to talk about money, because people listen to the show for 20, 25 minutes, and the more they can get something that's really actionable out of it, the better. So, I mean, what are your sort of first pieces of advice to people about how to communicate about money in a healthy way?
Absolutely. So, one of the frameworks that I teach is called the 6 Secrets to Healthy Money Conversations. And it outlines how you can begin understanding money and the way that you relate to it and that you respond to it so that you can communicate that with your spouse. So that starts with understanding that every decision that you make with money is an emotional-based decision, whether that's to seek pleasure or avoid pain. Every decision that you make is emotionally based. And that goes into then how we talk about money because we're driven by those emotions, which dictates how we talk and communicate around that because it's a response. So first off is understanding your own relationship and response to money so that then you can communicate that with your spouse when they understand that. And that looks like understanding what makes you scared about money, understanding what makes you motivated about money, understanding how you process your financial decisions from a excited standpoint or a nervous standpoint, and then supporting your spouse in that same regard. So those 6 secrets are really something that allow couples to engage with each other on that emotional level and then understand where they're coming from. So when they have those conversations, they can realize that we're not mad at each other. We are just expressing different emotions that we each have to money and understanding each other in a way that we can support that emotion and we can support the thought process in order to have a common ground around our finances, around our goals, around our concerns, around our fears and frustrations that allow us to then be able to use the same language with each other whenever we're making those financial decisions.
Yeah, wow. The thing that like just dove out of me when you said that was that people are either their relationship for money is about seeking pleasure or avoiding pain. And I could imagine that dynamic is just huge in understanding. Because I'm just thinking with Tarah and I think I'm an avoider of pain.
Okay.
And I think Tarah is a seeker of pleasure. And it's so interesting too. That's not just around money, but that is definitely, I can be a little more fear-based, a lot more cautious.
Yep.
And Tara's like, just freaking, let's jump in the pool. Trust. Let's go.
So the unique thing about that is we all have what's called a money personality. And that money personality is driven by our emotional state. So typically, if you are driven more by fear, driven more by excitement, you're going to have natural tendencies how you relate to money, respond to money, think about it, talk about it, act around it. You have this relationship that is driven by how you see and view money in those two emotions. So it's a complex mental dynamic that we don't even realize how much it plays into our everyday thinking and decisions, communication. But once you get a solid understanding around it and begin to implement those different techniques and those strategies, not only does the way that you talk about money change, but the way that you think about it, react to it, and respond to it dramatically changes. And it all goes into helping you develop more momentum with your financial management.
Well, and I love that you personalize it to what is your relationship with money and what's that narrative for you and your story. And then how can you relate that vulnerability, if you will, or that side of yourself to your partner? Because we normally are just like, oh, we just know we want a lot of it. We want to feel
Right.
comfortable enough around. It's the same thing with sex too. People don't really talk about it. They just know that they want it or they're avoiding it for whatever reason. And
Exactly.
so I love that you get really personal around the relationship with money itself so that you can share that vulnerability with your partner.
That's a great example of that, Tara, that I see a lot of times in couples is, this isn't every single time, but a vast majority of the time, the wife really seeks security from a saving standpoint. The husband seeks security from an abundance making money standpoint. And so many times those two actions clash because each person is focused on a different element of money management. But once you get aligned in seeking security from an abundance and protection standpoint, then you create a really strong balance of those two. And it's taking the two opposites and it's merging them together. So that's the most common example that I see among couples of how the customized approach really helps you both have unique viewpoints and perspectives around money, but they can be very much balanced and in unison with the right attitude.
Abundance and protection. I love that.
Yeah. So before we have some questions that involve more, I think, like specific dynamics within finances. But I think you've hit something right at the top that's about dynamic, and that there's oftentimes different dynamics that are in opposition to one another. The first one, I think, was about seeking pleasure or avoiding pain. And then the second one was about saving versus earning. So what is your advice to couples when they notice that they have, some diversity, like some opposition between each other in their approaches around finances?
Yeah, I'd say with every financial decision that you make, it has to go back to what is your why behind that decision? What is your vision for the future? How do you want to accomplish that? And why is this decision an important factor in reaching that? Because a lot of times, both husband and wife are going with the same thing. They just have different ways of getting there. If we can find what that common goal is, the common desire, and even the common fear and frustration that you're experiencing, that allows you to cut through those emotions to find the commonality in your language, in your financial management, which ultimately then allows you to make those decisions as a couple in unity. Because you both understand, hey, we want the same thing. Yeah. We just have different ways of getting there, of thinking about, talking about it. But we both know that we want to support each other in this endeavor. So if we can agree upon what our end goal is and what we want to do to accomplish that, then we can support each other in our strategies and our tactics and our actual day-to-day management of getting there. Because we each know what we're scared of and what we're motivated by, so we can find balance in those two perspectives and mental approaches to accomplish that goal.
I want to dive into some of the questions, but I'm just like, I could just speak organically here without.
Let's get into some specifics because I love these questions.
Well, and I'm also, because I've changed, I have 18 questions and I know I had to narrow it down because we don't have a 10-hour podcast. But one of the ones I didn't highlight, I feel like it is important because I will see a lot of this in the dynamics with our couples where one person earns more or is like the head earner. And so the other person feels like kind of trapped, like, well, they're the sole earner. And so the question I have for you is, what tips do you have for managing joint expenses, especially when one partner does earn significantly more and it feels like there's that power struggle there?
So I always encourage couples to view money as theirs, ours, we, because you can be married and there's a lot of different perspectives around this, and not to say that anyone is particularly right or wrong. But there is data that shows that if you view all your money, all your income, all your expenses, all your debt as one household unit, and you don't have any separation or you don't have any division, even if it's one person making more, one person making all, there is a unity around looking at that money as one piece of income, one set of expenses, one common debt, one common savings goal. So that's really what you have to do to have true success in those areas, because it's a team effort, right? We can't manage money separately and be truly united in marriage, because we have different perspectives, different attitudes, and different approaches to that. So anytime you can view it as ours and have that full unity, then that allows both the husband and wife to have that input, that common ground approach, to realize that we are managing this money as a couple, as a household unit, and we have the most success because we're going to fully support each other in that regard.
Yeah.
Can I ask this? I'm sorry. I'm thinking of this one couple years ago. Like, would not, could not, there's no we, I've earned all of this. You're coming in later in life. You do not have any access to this. So that just means like, well, then do you ever have to fire people? Because one's not willing to come to really to be in that we place. There are couples that come in that one's not willing to go through the therapeutic process. And we're like, well, that's going to be really hard. We can't find that common goal then.
It is. It's a significant challenge, whenever you have a couple that has that limiting mindset. I wouldn't say that I would fire them, but I would strongly encourage them to consider why that's a challenge for them, because it goes down to two deep levels of trust, of emotional understanding, of what you're comfortable with, what you are scared of. My ultimate goal would be to help them come to dealing with the negative connotation that they have around sharing money with their spouse and having that unified approach, but also realizing that may not be possible because of just the very deep levels of that. In which case, I'm going to encourage you to do whatever you can as a common management strategy. Maybe you have different budgets. Maybe you have, maybe you do have the split expenses. And at that point, it's a matter of just coming to the full agreement of, what do we believe is fair and right as we look at, the money allocation, and it just becomes a numbers game at that point. And unfortunately, you do kind of take out the unity from that, and it's more of a just financial calculation. But if that's so that you feel the most comfortable with it, I'm going to guide you through that process to make those financial smart decisions that you can have and trust that your spouse is going to follow that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a thing that we talk to couples about. And it's from one of our mentors, which is around the importance of making agreements in relationship. That sometimes maybe things are going to be not exactly, how one couple is or another couple, or maybe your advisor is telling you. But as long as you can come to an agreement and then hold to that agreement, it increases the likelihood you guys are going to, have success in whatever you're trying to do. So I think this next question is sort of in a similar vein to what we were just talking about, but it's around responsibility in the relationship, around sort of financial duties. And I know that's another thing. We see a ton of couples come in where one person is the bookkeeper and I'm the person, Tarah probably hasn't looked at our bank accounts in a decade or so, but, but
we'll get into this later on his podcast.
How
do you help people figure out how do they split the duties within finances?
We just had a podcast episode about 3 weeks ago on my show that kind of talked exactly about this, and trying to determine, who calls the shots, who leads the finances, who's kind of in charge of making that first budget draft, recording the transactions, keeping the thing afloat, moving forward. My personal belief behind that is that it is naturally the husband's responsibility to take that leadership role and to initiate management around the finances. But at the same time, there are a ton of women and wives who are very, very skilled, talented, capable of doing the exact same thing in their marriages. So I think it's something that especially if you're just getting into financial management, if you haven't really done a whole lot together, or if you're newly married, or if you just haven't really managed it as a couple, then I would suggest that you start out by evaluating who naturally has the gifts, has the skills, has the ability, has the interest, and the willingness, two very, very important keys.
Yes.
And beyond that, who feels the calling to take that initiative. And maybe both of them together, which is really the ideal scenario. But obviously one person kind of has to take that lead and has to take that initiative. So, the short answer to your question is I encourage the husbands to take on that role, with the understanding that their wives can be a tremendous support and confidant and accountability partner in that. And in some cases, the husband is not the qualified person. The wife does need to take over the details of that. But in that case, I also encourage the husband to maintain a leadership role in how the finances are being handled, even if the wife is the one, taking on that day-to-day responsibility.
Do you do, because this is another question, but it's also, so like before entering into a marriage, like pre-existing debt, like do you do counseling or coaching around that as well? Like do people reach out to you like, hey, I'm like in love with this girl who's got $150,000 in student loans. Help, Austin, help. Like what is the strategy there? What do you tell people?
So yeah, I've had a couple clients that have come to me as they were engaged before they got married. I've coached them through them getting married and starting their lives together. My recommendation, and this comes from a lot of what Dave Ramsey teaches, and I believe strongly in a lot of his teaches and his principles. Before you get married, I am a strong believer, and I encourage couples to agree on their money management, but manage their money individually. Because until you get married, there's just something about the relationship dynamic that you are not fully unified and invested in the areas of your life. You're going to get there, and that's the whole point of being married. But there's just pieces where your heart and your mind isn't there. So I encourage couples to look at the money as a couple, but let's take management practices maybe a little bit separately, unless they are just committed to combining money. In which case, I will walk them through, how do we treat this then as if we are married, as if we are unified, as if we are looking at this as singular income, singular debt, singular savings, singular expenses? Because if you're going to combine your money, that's how you have to approach it. So, another element of that, like I said, if there's a gentleman that, is engaged to someone with a lot of debt, I'm going to encourage them to work on that separately, with the intention that as soon as they're married, it becomes their debt and their goal and their mission. That's not a requirement ahead of time unless you want to do that. But as soon as you're married, that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah. I mean, that's so similar to also just an ethos sort of we espouse, which is, if your partner's anxious, you're anxious. If one person is struggling with something, you're struggling with something that trying to keep it separated of like, oh, this is your debt, so therefore you just got to deal with it. I just don't know how sustainable that becomes.
Yeah.
And that, don't you want your partner to suffer less? And being in debt is suffering. It's a pain. It hurts. It drains on your resources, and wanting to get together on it and support each other and getting out of it together, I think is huge.
Well, and I feel like this is a really big question to you, Austin. You don't have to answer it perfectly, but so how many times do we see couples where there's already so much resentment around so many different things, and then they just keep throwing their partner under the bus around spending, and then we wouldn't be here if you wouldn't have done this, and if we could. I mean, there's just so much resentment around money, and like when they're in the space that they're at now, like how do you help couples not to talk about it, even if they're having conflict about it, but so it doesn't damage their relationship?
Yeah, that's a tough conversation, right? Because
I know,
like I said earlier, money is personal, it's emotional, and it impacts every area of our life. And if we have a hard time communicating about it and relating to it, then no matter how much we have, we're going to have difficulty in financial situations. So whenever there is resentment there, whenever there is, ill feelings or just past experiences, there's a lot of hurt a lot of times because of the expectations and the misunderstandings and the shortcomings. And that's why, we go back to those frameworks I talked about earlier in those 6 secrets, because you are going to have this expectation out of your spouse that they're going to think about money, talk about money, and spend money the same way that you do. Newsflash, that's never going to happen. So the soonest that you can both realize that just because you think that's the right way doesn't mean that is the right way. Yeah. That allows both people to come to the understanding of, okay, I've got some desires. I've got some motivations. I have some expectations around money. How does my spouse and my partner feel? And can we find where we need to change, where we both are in the same boat, where we're both on the same mission and vision? Because we're not both wrong, or we're not both right. We have elements to each one of those. And that takes a lot of, obviously, vulnerability to get to that point. It takes a lot of trust and a belief in your spouse and your partner that they can change, but it also takes an acceptance of the fact that I'm responsible for this as well. I'm responsible for how I'm treating the decisions that my spouse and my partner made, and I'm responsible for how I'm reacting to the decisions that they made. So it's a two-way street, as everything is in marriage. And I like one of my mentors says, it's 100-100, not 50-50. So we both got to take full responsibility for our actions and our reactions, knowing that we're both right and we're both a little bit wrong too.
Yeah. So one of the things you said really popped for me, and it was around earning back trust. And I'll tell you, other than, affairs, which is something we've seen a good bit of over the years, some of the most significant betrayals in relationship I've seen have been money. Have been where somebody makes, hides something, something pops up from the past, somebody does something that they said that they promised they wouldn't do. And it is, why do you think, because I want to try to normalize for people their struggles with their partner and finances. Why is money such a huge disruptor in relationship?
Because we don't know how to handle it without getting personal. And we haven't been taught, many of us, the right way to manage and handle money. So whenever we make mistakes, we either have to admit our mistake or blame someone else for it. And neither one of those is spider easy to do, but they both require improvement and progress to be made. And so many times, and I'm guilty of this myself, we see men and women just almost refusing to believe that they could be wrong about something. And if they are told that they're wrong, then there is this defense that goes up because you can't criticize me for my decisions. I mean, that happens in so many areas of our life. But the reality is that we all make mistakes. We all do things that are not the best decisions, or not, right just by our spouse. But because we don't know any better, that's kind of our default. So the reason that money brings up so many issues is just because we can't get away from it. And until we learn how to talk about it, communicate about it, understand it, we're going to continue to make mistakes, which are going to continue to bring us back to that argument and that trust issue. Like I said, it impacts every part of our life. And that's why I'm so extremely passionate about helping couples overcome that, because it is the biggest challenge to having a healthy marriage. If you struggle to make decisions with your spouse, you're going to struggle to have a good marriage with your spouse. You're going to struggle to manage money with your spouse. You're going to struggle to live life with your spouse. And money is just a huge element of that.
Yeah.
Like you said, it spills out everywhere, especially with intimacy too. And it is a big trust connection that you have when you start to be able to have financial agreements that feel good for both of you. It's it's vulnerability. And,
Yes.
and like you said, what I heard there was like, we start to judge each other for the way we spend money because we don't quite individually know what our relationship with it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to blame the other person, and then judgment comes in. And now you're the one person that's not supposed to judge me. You signed up for life with me.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
And then it's off to the races, and then they come in for counseling.
Exactly.
Well, I think that last piece you hit was just spot on. And I'm sure there are like so many people in our audience who relate to it, and the vulnerability of money, and just not wanting to be wrong, and feeling blamed, and all of those things. So, it's clear we do a lot of wonderful work helping people, really centered around their relationship and the emotions, and even some of their like cognitive and behavioral patterns. But your specialty is money, and that's such an essential part of our life. So if somebody does want to like connect with you, what are the services you offer? What are the ways that they can connect with you? Just sort of, let our audience know how they can reach out and contact you.
Absolutely. And before I drop those, I just want to give one note, because it's something that speaks directly to what you just said there. So one of my clients that I've worked with for about 2.5 years now, whenever he first came to me, he said, "I am terrified. I do not want to be here, and let's go." And it took about 3 months for him to realize that his shame around finances and the fears and the challenges that he had, we're not going to be judged. We're not going to be criticized. We're going to be held with understanding. And that's one of the things that I really pride myself in the coaching work that I do, is giving my couples and my clients a really safe space for themselves and with me, because I'm not here to judge. I'm here to guide, lead, and provide support. And I want you to have the security and the safety of talking about those intimate things without fear of being critiqued, judged, criticized, reprimanded, because we're here to grow and here to learn. We're not here to cause more issues. So that's what I want to, bring that on your comment there as well.
Can I say one thing to that? Because that's so important, because a few years back, we had hired like a financial coach, and he was basically telling me to cut out like my cleaning person. Mm-hmm. And I was like heartbroken, because I'm like, and I never saw him again, because it felt awful. I'm like, that is the one thing that saves me a little bit of time.
Yes.
To just and he's like, you need, like, it was just this, like, I felt so like judged for having someone help me with the home every couple of weeks. And I was like, if this is what this feels like, this is awful. And I didn't want to go back. So I love that you create that safety, because that is the number one. That is how people change, is that safety in that safe environment where you feel like not judged, and now you can do the work. So I just had to share my own personal experience with someone that I did not feel safe with. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So the best way to connect with me, go to freedommoneycoach.com. That's my website. I got a free masterclass that folks can sign up for. There's also some resources there. I've got the 6 secrets for healthy money conversations they can download. There is a budgeting training there that they can access. And if they want to get serious about overcoming their fear and frustration of financial management, they can also book a free discovery call, 20-minute discovery call, and start the process there. And would love to provide coaching and insight to help them on the journey to financial freedom.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you for all of your knowledge and resources that you give to individuals and couples, and helping them have financial freedom, because then we can actually live.
Absolutely.
Live out of fear, really. I mean, there's still fear, but less fear.
Well, thank you, Austin. It's been a pleasure having you on Relationship Renovation podcast. Folks that are out there that are listening, that really like what Austin is saying, we'll have links in the show notes to get a hold of him, to schedule one of those discovery calls, and definitely check out his podcast as well, The Heart of Money. It sounds like he has an episode just in the past few weeks about splitting financial responsibilities within your relationship. So check that out. And thank you again, Austin, for being on the show.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.
Bye.